Okay, hey, welcome to Talking in Stations. But this time it's the EuroShow. Yes, of course. And I'm just going to screw that up completely. But you know, these things happen. Welcome everybody to the show. This is the show where we talk about sort of more mainstream gaming news, but all kind of how it relates to EVE Online and CCP to that regard. And there's a few kind of interesting things on the show. Let me just bring my notes up real quickly. We have some interesting thing regarding, like, some interesting sort of small news to start off with, start the show off. You know, something kind of fairly light to start the show off, and then we could jump into some like fairly more heavy subjects. One of those regarding EA up to their tricks again. Classic. One of the classic cases of CCP, don't do this. These, you know, we generally tend to approach some of these topics as, like, CCP, this is how it's done, and also like a CCP, this is definitely not how it's done, right? So that's kind of sometimes how we sort of approach some of these stories that have kind of gone on in the gaming sort of industry over the past week or maybe more. Go for it. There we go. So we have some usual panel of guests, usual panel from I am on fire today. Genuinely, I'm on fire.
Spot is actually rumored to be a CCP dev. I've heard this, so that's fine.
I just start this entire show again. Right. What I was meaning to say.
We're doing it over.
What I was meaning to say.
Reset. Well, apparently nobody can hear us anyway. They can only hear you.
Well, I fixed that. I fixed that because I saw that. So essentially, what we have is our usual panel on the show today, and that is Caleb Ariana, who sounds like that, and Dr. Spuddermain,
who sounds like this.
And we probably don't have Spod for that long because we got delayed a little bit, and he ordered food to sort of probably coincide with the end of the show, right? Something like that.
That was the intention. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to go like way over where the original show would end, so that's going to be interesting. We'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Anyway.
He tried to be completely professional and time his food stuff, and we failed him miserably.
Yes, we did. So, first subject, which is kind of an interesting one, but the Olympics are going to introduce the first ever VR sports competitions. What do you all think about that?
I'm wondering if it's going to be spparc.
I mean, that's kind of how I was gonna run with that one, because
the weird.
Go for it.
What I found super weird about it though is they're primarily talking about games that exist in the real world. Like, if you're gonna bring VR into the Olympics, then do sports that aren't possible in the real world. I don't know, like magic laser throwing or something like that. Like baseball, just go play baseball. If you've got a stadium, it's the Olympics. It's confusing.
It's true.
That's exactly why I said we need to have spparc as an Olympic game.
Yeah, like Tron based or styled games would clearly be really, really cool.
Well,
and spparc is right up there.
It's one of the games that really made me want to actually buy a VR set, because that looks like it's something that belongs in VR. I don't need VR sets for games that are just as enjoyable in non-VR. I don't understand this. This is similar to why I know that I'm in the wrong audience right now to say this, but I hate first-person shooters. I think they're dumb.
The first-person shooters there's an adrenaline aspect to first-person shooters. Well, there's a lot of aspects to first-person shooters that makes them kind of interesting. But the sort of the cerebral aspect of first-person shooters mostly isn't there. There are some exceptions, obviously, but I do kind of get you. I do get you where you're coming from there, Spot. Or sort of basically why are you doing sports that you could be doing in your usual sort of surroundings, and also
real baseball doesn't have bugs. Yeah, it's probably one of the most important things. It doesn't have physics glitches.
There's no lag in real basket.
No, it's true. And we've seen
funny fact, didn't they do VR racing recently, right? Wasn't it Formula One or something that did some VR stuff as well?
I think they did do some VR.
COVID thing.
Yeah, I think they did do some VR stuff initially. I think there was a few different sports that did some VR based versions of themselves and kind of and broadcasted it like it was a regular event sort of thing. Which is kind of interesting. They do it in Korea. They broadcast online sort of gaming championships and stuff like it was regular TV in Korea and stuff like that. So I don't see why we shouldn't be able to do it in in the UK or the US or in Europe or whatever, right?
And since you're mentioning one of the esports capitals of the world, I think we should poke fun at Hilmar and point out that he missed the train on putting spparc on the Olympics. That would have been glorious.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So this kind of thing is interesting because I'm wondering whether the sort of Olympics see sort of elite athletics just solely as a sort of a body kind of sport kind of thing, or is it body and mind sport, or can it just be sort of how good you are at doing certain exceptionally intensive tasks of the mind, if you know what I mean. What I'm talking about is you can have VR, you can have a VR sort of body experience with various different suits and various different accessories and stuff like that. Which I'm thinking is probably where the Olympics is going with VR sports. But, in terms of competitiveness, it is, how do I put this? Is being able to control more things, being able to sort of multitask, be something competitive? Could you... I'm thinking I genuinely am thinking of multi-boxing, how
can
how
I
far
multi-box my basketball team?
How far can multi-boxing go? And I'd love to see that in the Olympics. If that can end up being an Olympic thing.
Can I do all five characters on the virtual basket team? Can I be allowed to do that solo?
Yeah, you're allowed as many different members, as many different team members on your team as possible. You have to control all of them, though. But
you have to do it with the same set. So alt tabbing between clients might actually give you seizures.
I don't know how that would work, but I'd be interested in that. But that might sort of cross into the territory of unhealthy sports. I don't know. Anyway,
can you imagine alt tabbing between clients with a VR headset? I think that would get you nauseous.
That would be quite nauseous. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that might actually be quite nauseous. But hey, it'll be quite difficult.
I do have another thing for you. I have another thing for you, Mac. That's a little bit on topic. What about things like age groups and stuff like that? Because if you start having these esports things, right, it is a well-known fact that young people are really good at gaming, right? In the esports scene, those 14, 15, 16-year-olds are basically able to run circles with some of the older people, right?
Yeah, but then again, you also have you also have a preferred sort of age range for for athletes, and sort of athletes have points where they they're at their peak kind of physical sort of fitness, right? So you do have sort of a very similar sort of aspect in terms of real athletes, compared to, say, lightning reflexes of the younger generations when it comes to sort of gaming and VR and that kind of stuff.
And especially when it's VR, because you're adding in the physicality of it, which is where regular athleticism actually comes into it. Maybe you don't need to be as strong, for example, but you still need the physical reflexes beyond being able to click a button and no-scope somebody in Fortnite. Unless
they're actually attaching everybody into like those like force feedback kind of sort of peripherals and that sort of thing. Like, have a whole suit that basically is like fighting you.
But yeah, the point is, it's just odd that they've gone for traditional sports when there is a raft of sports that make sense. Like you could have Beat Saber, spparc. Those are two immediately that come out as something that is a perfect sport. It's competitive. It's actually not terrible to watch, and yeah, it fits the bill to me. Like just baseball and basketball just doesn't make sense.
And I think this next news item like plays perfectly into this as well, which is that Sony is patenting something that describes an AI that learns and plays games for you. Hopefully, that's not Olympic Games, right?
Does Olympics just become bots?
Yeah, just be us watching bots like sort of fight each other or basically compete against each other. That'd be crazy.
Then we're tiptoeing into the whole Coda Robo Wars and doping versus hacking, and yeah, it's a rabbit hole, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would want to sort of preface this with the fact that just because someone puts a patent down doesn't mean that they're like actively going for it. Like people put down patents all the time. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you actually have something functional to kind of go at to release utilizing it, that kind of thing. But at least it kind of it does foreshadow Sony potentially looking at something along these lines.
Well, I know that we are going to hit on the topic of a sports game producer in a bit, but this ties into the fact that some of the games that we talked about, like basketball and baseball, and then of course there's actual soccer and things like that. All of these things, well, if you're not manning the entire team virtually or doing alt tabbing and getting nauseous, maybe AIs need to improve a little bit because the competitive level is so high. So you don't have the problem where you can find these abusive things where one strategy basically works all the time, right? Like in some FIFA games and stuff like that.
Or what was it? The classic. I think I remember doing this on Gran Turismo a few times, like the lengthy oval track kind of marathon drives, and just basically setting up your controller so it just drives and sort of slowly turns, and then you just walk away for like half hour, kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, we should probably move on from this to something that might be a little bit more, a little bit nearer and dearer to people who watch this and people who watch and play EVE Online's hearts. But World of Darkness seems to be edging towards TV and movie projects.
This is so old, right? This is like almost like nostalgia level stuff. Like, okay, there used to be that old World of Darkness vampire series on TV. It failed a little bit. It got some good reception from at least the fan base, right? It was not bad, but it was not on par when it comes to actual execution, right? The stories were actually not bad.
The thing is, there's a lot of like other very, very well known, very famous, and very successful film and TV that kind of came out that was sort of, you know, sort of in the same orbit as, you know, as like the world, you know, sort of World of Darkness IP, that kind of thing. Like, you know, the whole, you know, vampire craze was basically born from, you know, Vampire the Masquerade and like all of the sort of surrounding, what would you call it, like the surrounding sort of genre and sort of LARPing kind of scene that was going on, right?
Yeah, you have everything from basically from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and forward, right? You got so many spin-offs that wanted to chip in and be part of the whole vampire craze, and of course you got them with the movies, with Underworld, with I'm afraid to say it, but Twilight. But you did get that whole hype from the World of Darkness interests, right? It's just that, in my opinion, back then, the state of production and the cost of doing good choreography, good special effects, all that stuff was just still a little bit too high. And I don't think we've actually reached the point until the last 5 years where this is really possible, and you're seeing it now. If you look at the most recent series that are coming out on HBO and Netflix and all that stuff, you're seeing a lot of these supernatural-esque topics, right? And I think this is actually the time where they could succeed. It's just, I strongly suspect they won't.
Yeah, I mean, I have my doubts as well. Like, I don't know how Sport kind of feels with this, but like, I'm definitely sort of pressing X for doubt on this.
I just don't find vampires interesting. So for me, it's the biggest shoulder shrug. Don't care. Just vampires, whatever. They're sparkly in the sun.
Yeah. They don't seem to die at night, even though like it's a full moon and that's just reflected sunlight. Like, why are they not dead?
It's just, physics doesn't make sense.
Well, and then of course the fact that they're doing this now, when we know that I think it's ABC that's actually doing a collaboration with Anne Rice. If I were to bet on which of these two projects were actually going to succeed, I think my money is going to be on Anne Rice and not on this World of Darkness thing, because I don't know what it is about World of Darkness as an IP that is so mismanaged. Of course, you can then point fingers and laugh at CCP for mismanaging it as well. But you've seen it with some of the other titles in games and stuff like that. It's so hit and miss, and they've had so many failures, right? Bloodlines is a decent game, but that's about it. It's not good. It's not good at the level that a World of Darkness title really should be. And I think, ironically, the CCP were the closest to actually deliver something that would get the World of Darkness crowd actually applauding, because it looked like it might actually end up in the same range as Underworld series actually did for movies.
That could be good.
If it's been so consistently almost cursed as a franchise, why is it still so held in such high regard? Is it one of those nostalgia things?
It's so good. No, it's just because it's so good. It's the same as some of the other things that they keep trying to do. Like now we're getting a new version of Dune, right? Mm-hmm. There's just some sources or IPs out there that are so good that they should be made, and they should be made in a really, really great way. It's just that they keep failing at it because I don't know if it's the wrong people or not enough money, but it's one of those two.
I mean, I know that, like, if you know, looking back a few years ago, like you had all of these various different remakes of old classic kind of sort of old, like classic kind of films or classic kind of sorts of things, and they were all pretty cringy, man. Like, I'm wondering whether we're just like we're in that kind of area where like it's starting to not get cringy, because like, I mean. I was gonna say, you know, the fact that they're kind of going with the fact that they've approached a group called there's a group called Hive Mind, this production company called Hive Mind, and they're behind the Witcher series on Netflix. I was going to be like, the Witcher series was pretty good. It wasn't like amazing, but was definitely pretty damn good. A little bit confusing for people initially.
Can I just give points to chat for actually mentioning one of my favorite RPGs ever, which is The Secret World, which actually does, in my opinion, succeed when it comes to the story writing. And I think this is the challenge for this crew, right? Because adapting the Witcher stuff is already there, right?
Yeah.
So it's really just about figuring out how to take the source material and writing a really good script and doing the storyboarding that is fairly close to the quality of the original. This is not the case with the World of Darkness stuff. You have to actually write good stories based on the cosmology and the universe. There is, of course, there's stuff out there that you could maybe try to adapt, but that would feel cringy and wrong because you have to rewrite it for an actual episodal series thing. So the format needs to be fitted, and that means that you have to come up with something original. This is what made the old vampire series completely fail, in my opinion, that the script writers were just, it was too much like someone trying to take Star Trek The Next Generation episodes and just reskin them with vampires. It's like, it was so cringy.
Yeah, but then you also have to ask yourself, like, if you go too far into the lore, too far into it, like, you can alienate people who are like coming into or trying to be introduced to the whole kind of thing. So you need to find some like good middle ground that's a good introduction for like people who don't know the World of Darkness sort of universe, and but not too heavy, if you know what I mean.
Well, this comes down to in my personal opinion, this comes down to having scriptwriters that have the skill set to actually write good characters. Not so much the stories. It's more about the characters and the character arc, because this is a proven recipe that we have seen so many times, and it just works. The rest can actually be mediocre. I'm currently watching The Resident, which is a medical show, and I'm watching SWAT, right?
Yeah.
And both of those are really about what's happening to the main characters. The rest is like a recipe that, okay, someone comes in with some injury, or someone is held up in a hostage situation. These things are easy and very much episode friendly, right? It doesn't matter what the mission or the quest giver is telling you to do. It's what is happening to the individuals that you want to actually follow their story.
Yeah, it's like I think I've experienced this as well when it comes to sort of like watching The Expanse, right? Like good sci-fi is like actually more of a sort of a good, a story where you understand the people rather than understanding like the setting, right? So it's basically about the people and the interactions of the people and the development of the characters of those people, rather than the main kind of the main thing of it being their environment, where they are, or what what they're sort of what they have to do. It's more about something that can be relatable to basically anybody and everybody.
And this is
that's why games like Eve are so good.
But that's because you're you. I was going to say, this is why one of my favorite games for the last 5 to 10 years, if you ignore The Secret World and EVE Online, is actually The Last of Us, because that is the strongest character-driven game and story that I have seen for a long, long time. Right? It captures you instantly, and the fact that they managed to create a sequel that was even stronger than the first one is like, that was just mind-blowing, because it was so driven around what you felt about the characters in the game.
Well, I mean, that's debatable, and I've seen some sort of reviews of the Last of Us Part 2 as being very much not as favorable as the first one, but it's all in the the eye of the beholder, right, in that regard. Anyway,
it was just the fact that I was emotionally shocked by the game, both the first one and the second one.
That's understandable.
Every single step, right? It was just, it was a roller coaster ride when it comes to identifying with and emoting with the characters. You can then discuss whether or not you like the details and stuff like that. But if you could predict that whole roller coaster, you were really fucking smart, in my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, we should probably park that. We'll be going to our first ad break. And unfortunately, I think we're probably going to have to say goodbye to Spoddymane, Dr. Spod. He's got some prior appointments.
Half a mile away.
Okay. Okay, so stick with us. We'll be back after these little adverts. Welcome back, guys, to the next part of the EuroShow, where we're discussing a very familiar company and their shenanigans.
This is McLeod's best friend because they keep feeding him dramatic and angry news.
They keep doing it, dude. They keep doing it. Obviously, what we're talking about is EA is basically did a dumb.
How are we classifying this as news?
I don't know. It's I mean, it's not news because it's completely within their sort of their usual behavior, right?
Yeah, it's like more like concurrent coverage.
This is the CCP. This is how not to do it kind of segment of the show. Basically, EA, an insider in EA leaked a bunch of internal marketing documents where they pretty much kind of showed that they are being pressured to heavily push marketing and like heavily push the marketing side of their sort of esports titles, specifically FIFA titles, obviously, if you're FIFA 21, for people to get involved in Ultimate Teams. And if you've watched this show before, you know that we covered Ultimate Teams at one point because, you know, they did a whole bunch of like really really shitty things, like really anti-consumer stuff. Like, I mean, do you remember any of that stuff, Caleb?
Well, this whole topic, it just goes back to what we were talking about. I think it was last episode where we were covering a similar topic. This is about the complete lack of standards when it comes to game development. They are still like, to me, it feels like they're still like 50 years behind. It's like everything is just allowed. It's like
it's almost
rights for consumers, no rights for employees, no regulation, no oversight, no nothing. It's like the Wild West. It's like you can do whatever. You can print your own money. You can shoot your neighbor. It's like this is just insane world. And I really would like to see game developers coming together and actually being effective. I know there's projects out there to try and do this. It's just, it feels like they're failing.
I almost kind of think that there's this sort of if you walk to EA, to like an electronic arts, like a sort of corporate job interview. Like part of that job interview is like, a test to see whether you actually have any moral fiber in your being. And if you do, you're just like ejected straight away. Just like, sorry, no, this is not the place for you. If you have morals, if you have standards,
are you saying they're
get out?
So you're saying they're giving the same personality test questions that you do for hiring people to intelligence services and stuff like that?
Well, no, because like, I mean, there's good intelligence officers and there's bad intelligence officers. It depends entirely on how you kind of, I guess how you want to approach it.
But you do know that some of the tests for when you go into the armed forces is actually testing you for exactly that. It's testing you for like high IQ. If you're too high IQ, you will kind of get deselected from certain types of groups because you're actually going to be disruptive, and they're testing you for your actual ethics, whether you are completely outside of the range of. Well, it's more the fact that you have to remember that they have to teach you to take orders almost without question, right? And they have to condition you to do. Well, this is a counter to what's called the shooting problem, right? If you have too strong a tendency of empathy, right, you will never be able to get conditioned to pass the shooting problem. So they might as well get you out immediately. So it's not even a joke when I say that. I would not be surprised if some of the tests that they give you, at least in something like round 2, would be focused on figuring out whether you will be a disruptive employee.
Yeah. Part of this, I'm not going to lie. Part of this did remind me a little bit about the whole greedy is good incident with CCP. Only because it was like a leaked thing that CCP didn't want people to see, and it was taken out of context and stuff. But like, there's a degree of like having things taken out of context, and then there's EA saying things have been taken out of context, like, because like right here, like an EA representative told CBC the document was being viewed without context, adding that the interpretations of what was being said are misinformed. Right? What was leaked was actually a 54-page document, so it wasn't like it wasn't like there wasn't.
That's longer than greed is good. That's for sure.
Like there's, I mean, how much more context do you have to have? Like 54 goddamn pages.
That's a lot of material. I would suggest that EA should introduce what I call the mouse test, because this is part of what you do when you do medicine, right? And biology stuff. You actually have to dissect and kill a mouse, right? So anyone that squirms at that, just don't hire them.
Yeah. And there's a classic thing. There's some very suspect things. All roads lead to FUT. If you're wondering what FUT is, it's FIFA Ultimate Teams. That's what that is. They're wanting to incentivize that players be emphasized that players will be incentivized to convert throughout the summer to basically play FIFA Ultimate Teams rather than the regular other mode of FIFA, which is, that's not absolutely rammed full of loot boxes where they make an absolute killing in terms of money.
If I was tinfoil hatting for a moment, I would say that the EA is the game developer most likely to have been infected by MK Ultra agency stuff.
And here actually is like one of the slides from the presentations that was this presentation aspect that was leaked. So there is the all roads lead to FUT kind of thing. Obviously these are sort of bullet points of a of a sort of presentation that they would have had internally inside of Electronic Arts. And there's another one. We have more active players at this point in FIFA than ever. 5.3 million for FIFA and 3 million for FIFA Ultimate Teams. Squarely focused on engaging current players and actively messaged and incentivized to convert. And FIFA Ultimate Teams is the cornerstone.
Is this where, as PC Master Race and Nerds of Nerddom in EVE Online react to, well, if you're playing FIFA games, do you really deserve anything else?
I don't know, dude. Like,
is that too cold?
It's a bit cold, but like, I mean, it is a little bit cold. Like, I mean, addiction is one of those things that some people just can't control.
True, but I would say to anyone that plays FIFA, play better games.
There are much better games out there that don't basically, dumpster all of your effort and time and grit, every single like year and a half. You need to get out of that constant sort of bad relationship.
It's what they say about toxic relationships, right? Just walk away.
Please walk away. And they released the EA released a sort of a reply or retort or something of that matter. Comments on recent FIFA Ultimate Team's media reporting.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree with chat. If you really want to play soccer, go outside and play the real game. It's really fun. And when you hurt other people, it's actually more fun because you can actually see that you're doing something to them.
This is always like, this little bit here is always a bit of a tell as to when somebody starts lying. The facts are.
The facts are.
Yeah. Okay. My God. I don't know where to go with this, to be fair. It's too like, when something's too easy, like you just like, it's too easy to beat down on them for this. Like,
yeah, it is.
I mean, it's practically there in black and white. I mean, it is there in black and white. It was a 54-page of black and white, text. That's how black and white it was.
I think that the problem is the fact that they keep doing it, right?
They keep doing it, and then they keep kind of going down it. They keep doing the whole everything is fine, don't worry about it. Like, this is, oh my God, man.
So yeah, EA is at it again. No news at 11.
Oh Jesus. So what can we gain from this? Like, why cover this at all in the show?
Well, because of the way that they are representative of the worst of game development, right? And if we want to get game, I know that there's a lot of gamers that really have dreams about getting into the business and actually making games and all of that, right? It's the classical armchair developer thing and dreams about making games for a living and all that. But right now, we need to have gamers of the world kind of almost uniting and backing up behind the game developers that actually have morals and strengthen their position. So buying from the game developers that do actually pay decent wages and treat their customers with respect and all that, right? This is why, again, ironically, I would say that CCP are one of the better game developers in the world when you look at things like this, how they treat their employees, right? How they actually treat and listen to their customers. Of course, you can say, well, there's this new upstart that's doing better. Yeah, of course, they don't have 20 years of actually doing this, so they're not at the same, call it, professional level. But I think CCP is actually a good example of someone at least trying to do good.
Yeah. Do you think that to some degree this this sort of 54-page I wouldn't call it article, like 54-page document about internal document regarding, you know, how to effectively market FIFA, right? Upcoming FIFA titles. Do you think this is very much a kind of like a tell that I mean, we don't really have any context prior to it, like prior, you know, in prior titles. But like, do you think maybe it's a bit of a tell to everybody that that EA kind of knows that their days are numbered with regards to, you know, all of the loot boxing and stuff? So they're trying to basically, you know, go 110% into it before they actually get cut off.
I do think that there is aspect of that they are pushing the pedal because it's the last, I'd say the last 3 to 5 years where they can keep doing this. I think you're going to see something very similar when it comes to monetization schemes of things like mobile games and stuff like that. I think you're basically going to get a cleanup of the entire gaming industry within the next 5 years, because it is so overdue, and it's no longer just nerds, right? This is a massive industry. There is no longer the whole gamer stigma in the same way. So the market penetration is so high that you need regulations, you need oversight, you need to clean up the act, and it needs to be something where customers are properly protected. And I think one of the places where you're going to see this start off is already slowly beginning, and it's going to be in the EU, right? Because they are pretty aggressive when it comes to introducing regulations and things like this. And I would keep my eyes on what comes out from EU when it comes to new rules and regulations on gaming and gaming industry.
So Valamir in chat kind of like said something interesting that I thought was like, you can read it as being like, oh well, you know, that would be sort of a somewhat interesting concept to a game to some degree, but like it's not, it wouldn't be in the sort of same style as like Football Manager, because obviously, you know, you have the love of a particular sport to kind of, you know, to hedge your game on kind of thing. But you know, if you couldn't get a basically imagine sort of like, you know, very much how you have games as a, you know, football management games, you know, can you have like a game development manager game kind of thing, but like you'd have to caricature the absolute shit out of it, right? And you'd have to basically create it in a style that, like, you know, you have to sort of you have to manage your way through an absolute ton and a half of like controversies and all that kind of stuff. Like that's how you'd probably have to do it. But like
Mac, he's trolling us. He's basically almost hinting at, if you think that the FIFA games and EA are bad, wait till you look at actual real life football league and corruption in the real world.
That is true. That is true.
Like 10 times worse. So
that is true.
I think he just one-upped us on that one.
He definitely one-upped me, I guess, in that regard. So yeah, okay. Props.
How did the whole thing go to Qatar? Like what? Yeah. What in the world? What happened?
That makes no sense. Absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Anyway, we should probably just
a crazy
quickly.
desert. Yeah, putting the cup in a crazy desert nation makes no sense at all.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, we'll quickly go. We'll probably leave it here in that regard, and move on to our next, the next topic that we have for the show, which is actually something that we came across, and it is an interview with Hilmar Vega Peterson, obviously CCP Hilmar. What did you think of this interview?
Well, of course, it's nice when Hilmar is doing the rounds and giving interviews to media. I like reading some of his stuff and listening to him on video, even if it's sometimes a little bit pie in the sky stuff. I think this one was a little bit weak and short, but I did like some of the takeaways, especially with what I think I almost hinted at earlier. The fact that the way that he talks about his own business, the way he talks about his experience being a game developer, and then, of course, especially how he views his failures and successes. I think that's one of my favorite takeaways from this interview, that if we go back and look at EVE Online and its history and its vision and where they wanted to go, and especially where people like Hilmar and Torfi Franz wanted to take the game, they had very, very big dreams, right? And I think he realizes that a lot of the mistakes were his, and he's kind of owning them a little bit in this interview and saying that the dream is not gone. They now just want to do it in a different way, and he wants to include more voices. And I think that's exciting, especially for what we're seeing in the development of EVE Online right now.
Yeah. Like, I think the most obvious kind of moment in this interview was like when he was saying like, what was your biggest failure and what did you learn from it, right? Very job interview style kind of question, right? What is your biggest failure and how did you learn from it? Basically, him saying how his biggest failure was involved in taking shortcuts towards realizing, for CCP to realize their core purpose of building virtual worlds, basically building EVE Online, and his personal kind of experience of just because you can see the path to get there doesn't mean that you should run down it, right?
Exactly, and I do have one comment to that, because people always poo-poo Hilmar when he says that quote with building games that are more important than real life. And ironically, I think it's a phrasing problem, because if he phrased this a little bit differently, I think a lot more EVE players would realize that he's not as wrong as people tend to say, right? Because think of this as making virtual jobs more meaningful than real jobs. Because if you think about it, in EVE Online, there's a lot of people that are currently playing the game in roles and virtual jobs that are way more inspiring and meaningful than potentially their real life jobs are. So he's not as wrong as people tend to claim that he is.
I mean, I guess when I sort of try and rationalize or try and sort of make sense of that particular phrase, to me it's kind of it's a bit of a, as you say, sort of like bad phrasing, but I kind of see it more along the lines of, realizing the impact of virtualized jobs, not virtual jobs, but virtualized jobs, right? They're just as real as everything else. You and I can partake in, working on a virtual project together, which is just as real as if we were doing it like, in the same room. And it can lead to an end state that is just as valuable to real people than if it was, if we did it in an office, right? So
And this is
That's how I see it.
If you think about how many people in EVE Online that actually do things like managing stuff and working with spreadsheets and doing planning and whatnot, all of these things are directly one-to-one applicable in the real world. And again, if you imagine someone like us, right? If you and I were suddenly hired to work for BBC, doing production of TV, it wouldn't feel that different. Of course, there would be things that we would need to adapt to, and of course, the rig of control that you would have to manage, Mac, would be massively bigger with more buttons. But other than
I would
that,
have an amazing base station.
Amazing rig, right?
Yeah, amazing rig.
But the work itself is very much the same. The planning, the procedures, the prepping, the execution, the post-production, the organizational hierarchy of stuff, and who's doing what. All of these things are very similar.
Yeah, it is. So is there anything else aside from that particular those particular parts of the or that particular part of the interview that you found interesting, just out of interest?
Well, I think what I'm taking away from it is the part about him talking about the mistakes and the fact that a lot of the vision is still the same. It's just not being played as loud to the audience, right? And if I'm looking at what CCP has been doing for the past 2 years, I'm seeing a direct correlation. I'm not going to say, oh, we are aiming for all the same goals as we did prior to the Summer of Rage, but a lot of them are very, very similar, which means they are kind of wanting to take EVE and New Eden and CCP to very much the same location that they dreamed of going 10 years ago. Now they just want to do it the right way, properly paving the road, pacing it correctly, not making impatient mistakes like they did with Dust and stuff like that. I think, and I think this is really encouraging, at least to the ones that had and shared the same dreams that CCP had back then. And I was one of those, right? So I'm really looking forward to the next 10 years. Sure, they might hurt a little bit soonish, but I think they can tank it. And if they tank it and keep the vision, I think they are actually going to eventually reach that goal. And I'm really hyped about that, because there is nothing out there like EVE Online, as we covered in our USP episode. It's just not comparable.
There are things that sort of try and approach it, but like they always lack that sort of that determination to go all the way, right? It's always kind of like, oh well, we want to make basically go sort of 75% of the way to sort of CCP or to EVE Online's like USP, but then they kind of go like, but we're not going to make it like, we're not going to put everybody on the same server, that kind of
even
thing.
If they, let's say someone managed to do let's just say a completely dream thing, like a perfect fantasy setting copy, almost one-to-one, of the same perfection level in quotation mark as EVE Online, which would be great, and I would definitely go and play that. But they don't have 20 years of history, right?
That's
so they
also
don't.
the case.
They don't have the massive. Well, some would call it the gambler's fallacy, but I don't think it's really a gambler's fallacy. It's more like, this is part of my life now. This is part of the EVE player's hobby and existence, and
it's persistence. Like I think persistence is, like, there's a difference between persistence and a difference between gambler's fallacy. Like gambler's fallacy is basically like you started down a path and you gonna want to stay in with it in order to get something out of it, right? But like this, I think it may be kind of subtle, but I think there is still a marked kind of difference between that and just like things that persist.
Yeah,
right?
and funny fact, many players have used the comparison with actual romantic relationships, right? And I have never heard anyone talk about the gambler's fallacy about a relationship. right? You don't
Yeah.
say, oh, I have to stay in this bad relationship because I've already invested 5 years. You might emotionally feel that, but it's just not a gambler's fallacy. It's a dedication invested already in this. So when you weigh whether or not to leave a relationship, it's completely different than the sunken cost, and it's not about money. It's about emotions. It's about who you are and your identity. So I think it's got a lot more in common with a romantic relationship, if anything, or a hobby in general, right?
Or just a general relationship with anybody. Like, it's one of those things where, it's strange how gamers want to sort of frame it in a sort of like gambler's mentality sort of thing. It's a really strange sort of thing. Maybe it's just all the things that EA has done just rubbing off on us, like, and on our psyche kind of thing.
But funny fact, it's something that often comes up when we talk about our organizations and our tribalism, right? Because usually, even when we are most disgruntled and pissed about things not being the way we want it to be in EVE Online, what usually always ends up keeping us here or bringing us back is exactly the relationships that we have with our fellow players. So this is why it is not a matter of what CCP is creating as a game developer. It's the fact that they are what Hilmar keeps mentioning. They're janitors, and they're basically just looking after the clubhouse. And we are using it, and we are hanging out with our friends. And the friendships that we have, especially when we are playing for a bit longer than 1 or 2 years, when you have played for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, the relationship you have are almost as meaningful, sometimes even more meaningful than the ones you have in real life. So
and that's actually kind of a very sort of interesting thing, because a lot of people kind of look at the sunken cost fallacy and the persistent sort of mechanic that CCP has and sort of has adopted in EVE Online. I just wanted to kind of point this out. Having played EVE Online for, God, what is it, like 11, 12 years now? Like, I've spent a decent amount of, like, I don't even want to know how much money I've, like, slowly trickled into CCP kind of thing. Like, if I totaled it up, I would probably be quite shocked. But to be completely honest, that amount of money isn't what it keeps me, like, that amount of money invested into EVE Online is not what keeps me playing EVE Online. Like, that, like, I'm not there I'm not there sort of like, thinking to myself like, oh, I've put so much money into this game, I need to carry on playing it. Like, no, that's never in my thought process whatsoever. It always is like wanting to enjoy playing something with the people who I have met and the people who I have a friendship, a relationship in various different ways, shapes and forms, that I've developed through playing EVE Online. Like, it just so happens that those people play EVE Online as well, so it's a good medium to be able to enjoy their company.
It becomes the shared experience. I think Sothis actually nailed it, right? Basically, he's saying EVE succeeded at facilitating real experiences. This is back to one of the campaigns that they ran. Was it 5, 7 years ago? You remember EVE is real, right?
Yeah.
and yes, it sounded memey and gimmicky and marketing oriented, but it was true. And this is the irony. Even though you can tongue in cheek laugh at it a little bit, but it is a fact of EVE Online that once you have played for a certain amount of time, these experiences do become real, and they do. But of course, they can only be shared with other EVE players, which is why we are so weird. We cannot talk about these things with quote unquote normies because they don't understand. To them, it sounds like gobbledygook. Even again, the classic question. So, what's that game you play? It's like, oh my god, I have to explain this. I don't know. I don't know how.
I don't have the time.
I can't explain it to you.
We don't have the time to be able to explain this game to you. Like, you just have to sort of just grin and nod, and that'll be it. Yeah. That'll be good. But
or just trying to start actually playing, and you will see for yourself. And this is where I go back to my favorite never-ending story thing, the scene where the dad is actually, or granddad is saying that this book is not safe. And it's the same to me with EVE Online. EVE Online is not a game like other games. This game is not safe. If you're not ready for it, it's not for you.
I imagine. Can you imagine what the ESR, like how the ESRB, like who rates like entertainment titles and stuff, like how did they even approach this game?
Well,
to rate
I think
it,
that I think that EVE Online should come with this great warning thing on it that says "not safe for human interaction."
I mean, that could even if anything, that could probably sell more. Sell EVE to more people. You know, the usual way of like, don't buy this, don't get this kind of thing, and then suddenly people are like, why should I get it? Like, they're holding on to a secret. Let's go get it.
Yep, and the secret is there. You will never leave. It's like, what was that old game? I remember the opening scene, elevator mission, when he says that thing. Welcome, stay a while, stay forever. This is exactly what I feel about EVE Online.
Oh, and with that sort of phrase, I think we should probably draw this show to a conclusion, as it were. Thank you very much for your time and your musings, by the way, Caleb. It's always interesting, your perspective.
And if you're watching this show, you're already stuck in here with us.
I'm half expecting someone to say like, "No, you're stuck in here with me," like in chats.
That's the correct answer.
Exactly. Anyway, usual sorts of things. Thank you very much for sticking with us for the show. We will be in the Discord after the show, just to, for chats if you want to chat about anything on the show or anything else you want to talk about, whether EVE related, whether not EVE related, whatever, that kind of thing. You should definitely stick around and check out Madderall's sort of daily news day show for in-game stuff, in-game and player-related news relating to obviously EVE Online. But with that said, that's probably going to be us done for the day, and we will see you next Friday, I believe. Yeah,
indeed.
So yeah, thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.